Hey mathematicians, Miss Johnson. Today we are going to be reviewing ratio and proportions. This is something that you learned in 6th grade. So ratios compare two quantities using division. Hopefully you have this paper. If you don't have this paper, you can kind of take notes as we go. You can pause the videos and stuff like that so you can get the notes written down in your notebook, okay? So it's important. This is a review of something you did in 6th grade, but you know how it's easy to forget stuff, so just make sure you have it written down, okay? All right, so there are 2 boys. So we're here. There are 2 boys for every 3 girls. And remember, we're looking at comparing 2 quantities, right? So what we're comparing here are 2 boys and for every 3 girls. So we're comparing boys and girls. So ratios can be written 3 different ways. Always write the word ratio no matter what. So here's one way. You've got boys to girls, just 2 to 3, and it's got the little colon, okay? All of these are read the same way. They're all read boys to girls. You can write it with the word to, or you can write it in fraction form. So you've got boys to girls. Again, all read the same way, right? So it's 2 boys for every 3 girls. Now, if someone had asked you what is the ratio of girls to boys, your numbers have to match the order that they ask you to put it in. So if it says girls to boys, then you need to put 3 to 2 because there's 3 girls and 2 boys. Okay? And you can write it any way. You can write it with the colon or you can write it as the fraction. Right? This would be girls to boys. Right? Okay? All right. So there are 3 types of ratios. There is a part-to-part ratio, there's a part-to-whole ratio, and then a whole-to-part ratio. Okay, so our part-to-part ratio for this instance is boys to girls, or it can be girls to boys. When we look, the boys to girl ratio, here's a visual of it, right? There's 2 boys, 3 girls, so the boys to girl ratio would be 2 to 3. In fact, let's go ahead. We always want to write our word ratio to match. It's going to help us. Just trust me, it's going to help us, okay? The 3 to 2 ratio is girls to boys. All right, those are both parts to part. Those are the 2 parts that make up our whole, make up our total. Okay? So our part to whole ratio is going to be boys to total or girls to total. So when we write that, this is 2, so that's the boys. And then 5 is the total. You can see right here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all together, right? So the total is 5. And then the girls to total would be 3 to 5. The whole to part is just the reciprocal. The whole to part is just the reciprocal. So it would be total to boys, so 5 to 2. And then total to girls would be 5 to 3. Okay? So hopefully you kind of remember that. You see there's actually 6 different ratios that can be written from every set of information, unless it's rates. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 different ratios can be written from one piece of information. Our one piece of information was boys to girls is 2 to 3. And we wrote 6 different ratios. That's going to come in handy when we're trying to answer questions using ratios. Okay? All right. So proportions are ratios that are equivalent. And we know equivalent means equals. Okay? When ratios are proportional, missing information can be determined by setting up a proportion and using a scale factor or constant of proportionality. Those are similar terms there that mean the same thing. Or we can cross multiply to solve. Okay, so we're gonna do examples. Oh my goodness, what happened to my word proportion? Did I accidentally erase it? All right, there we go. All right, so we're going to look at these two questions, and we are going to use scale factor or cross multiply. We're going to do both. Sometimes it's easier to use the scale factor or the constant proportionality, and sometimes it's easier to cross multiply. Okay? All right, so let's read the question. It says 7th grade has a ratio of 5 boys for every 4 girls. If there are 70 boys, how many girls are there in 7th grade? Okay, so we have 5 boys for every 4 girls. There's 70 boys, and how many girls? That's what we're looking for. When you're going to set up your ratio, you always want to look in your question. Okay, they're going to give you a ratio, boys to girls. Then they're going to give you another piece of information, 70 boys, and then they're going to ask you for something. They're asking us for girls. So the ratio that we need is boys and girls. Not because of what's over here, but because of what is in the question. Okay? So I said you always write your word ratio, boys to girls. So you go find your original information that they give us. So they give us 5 boys for every 4 girls. So boys, girls. Now, if my B is at the top, that means all the boy information needs to go in the top. And if the G is at the bottom, girls, all the girl information go at the bottom. So we're going to set up 2 ratios. We're going to set up 5 to 4. And then the other number that we have is 70 boys. So the 70 boys is going to go at the top with the boys. And then I do not know the number of girls, so I'm going to put an X. All right, so I'm going to use scale factor. So scale factor is just like finding a common denominator. You say 5 times what gives me 70? Well, I don't know, so I'm going to go to the side. But I do know it divides into it because it has a 0 at the end. Okay, so 14. So 5 times 14 is 70. Whatever I multiply the numerator by, I have to multiply the denominator by. So I'm going to go to the side. I'm going to say 14 times 4. 16, 4, 5. So X equals 14 times 4, which is 56. And 56 represents, 56 is this, and it represents the girls. So this is 56 girls. Okay, so that's the scale factor way. Now let's set up the cross multiply. So it's the same setup, exactly the same. Boys to girls is 5 to 4, 70 boys to I don't know how many girls. But when we cross multiply, we're going to multiply the diagonals together. Okay, multiply the diagonals together. So 5x equals, or 5 times x is 5x equals 70 times 4. 70 times 4, if you don't know what it is, you go to the side and multiply it. So 5x equals 280. 5 times something gives me 5 times something gives me 280. How do I figure out what it is? So you can divide by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. So that's going to give me x equals 280 divided by 5. So 280 divided by 5. 5 times 5 is 25. So 56. Notice we got the same answer no matter which way we do it. We get the same answer. Again, sometimes it's easier to use scale factor, and sometimes it's easier to use cross multiply, and sometimes it's easier to use either one. All right, let's look at the next question. Looks almost exactly the same, but there is a difference. Okay, it says 7th grade has a ratio of 5 boys for every 4 girls. So far, it's exactly the same. If there are 70 boys, that's exactly the same. How many total students are there in 7th grade? So this is a different question. Okay, it's a different question. So we could take the information that we learned from the first problem that we did, and we could just say, okay, there's 56 girls. I'm going to add it to the 70 boys, and I'm going to get my total. But I want to show you, and I want you to write down a different way, like if we hadn't figured out that there were 56 girls already, a different way that we could have done this, okay? So remember we talked about we get our word ratio from our question. So we know we have 70 boys, and we know we want a total amount. So our ratio is going to be boys to total, not boys to girls. Okay, boys to total. So if we think about this, right, we have 5 boys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 4 girls, 1, 2, 3, 4. So altogether, how many total is that? That's 9. So our boys to total ratio is going to be 5 boys to 9 girls. Right? Equals, we know we have 70 boys, so boys is at the top, so we put 70 at the top, and I don't know the total. Okay? Now I am going to use information that we did from the one up there because we already know that 5 times 14 is 70. So whatever I multiply the numerator by, I have to multiply the denominator by. So I'm going to go to the side, and I'm going to say 14 times 9 is 126. So x equals 14 times 9, which equals 126 total 7th graders. Okay? All right, now let's just practice our cross multiplying. So we say boys to total, everything's the same, 5 to 9 equals 70 to x. That 70 to x, that setting it up is exactly the same. It's just different when we actually go to solve it. Okay, so we're going to cross multiply, so we're going to multiply the diagonals. Okay, so we're going to say 5 times x. So 5x equals 70 times 9. Okay, 9 times 7 is 63, so this will be 630. Divide by 5. Hopefully you remember that solving equations from 6th grade as well. So 630 divided by 5. So x is 126 7th graders. Okay. So I'm hoping that kind of refreshes your memory about proportions. We are going to be doing lots of examples of these, so don't worry. You're going to have lots of practice if you've forgotten. Okay, so make sure that you have gotten all these notes down. All the notes are important. Okay, especially because it's been a while since you've done it, and you're going to need to look back at this. So proportions is a real important concept at 7th grade.